Initiative.
It's a wonderful initiative.
The GlobalSouth network opened new horizons for judicial cooperations.
GlobalSouth network provide a platform for meaningful dialogue and collaboration, fostering efforts to build a more equitable and resilient legal landscape.
GSN network continues to expand areas of activity, further strengthening its impact and reach.
The universal concept of justice compels us to join our efforts, and this is, I believe, the forum for promoting the same goal.
Well deserved for the hectic activity you have made. I am astonished, I am amazed, I was impressed.
May I at the outset commend you, Dr. Ayad, for the immense work that you're doing in the GSN. The GlobalSouth Network is a much admired initiative.
كانت جزء لا يتجزأ من الدولة العثمانية.
We are being criticized for doing our job and for upholding the federal constitution. Like I have said in the past, I will not bend to such lame pressures and insinuations.
It's commendable. South Network focuses on all disciplines and regions, creating a bridge between academia, civil society, legal community, etc.
Quiero expresar mi sincero agradecimiento al Dr. Nauman Riad.
Dr. Nauman Riad, the founder and convener of the GlobalSouth Network. His visionary leadership has established a vibrant forum where judges, academics, and practitioners from around the world can share and exchange ideas. Initiatives like today's dialogue allow us to compare jurisprudence, share best practices, and develop common principles. This has the potential to contribute to transnational standards in procedure and enhance administrative law globally.
I would like to point out that Dr. Riad's initiatives have not only enriched comparative judicial dialogue, have also fostered mutual understanding of the diverse challenges that courts face in safeguarding the rule of law and constitutionalism.
We can rule when we want in the cases which are brought to us by citizens and residents. In the EU, this openness of mind is increased by the fact we apply, in some cases, same norms from the EU treaties or the EU directives or regulations.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to meet you all, and I'm really looking forward to this afternoon's seminar. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you. This is the 41st seminar in phase 4 of the International Interdisciplinary PhD in Progress weekly seminar series, which is organised by the GlobalSouth Network. Before we begin, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Nauman Riad, who is lecturer in law at Leicester Law School and founder and chief convener of the GlobalSouth Network. It's a lot of work to organise and to lead these weekly seminar series, but they play a really important role in bringing together scholars and practitioners from across disciplines and regions. My name is Charlotte Baker. I'm a professor in French and Critical Disability Studies in the School of Global Affairs at Lancaster University, and I'm also Faculty Associate Dean for Engagement and one of the leads in the Health Research Hub there. My work focuses on disability and stigma in sub-Saharan Africa, especially relating to albinism, and I've led several international research projects which have been funded by the AHRC and the Wellcome Trust. a lot of my work involves collaboration with grassroots organisations, but also with other stakeholders, including policymakers. Beyond academia, my collaboration with UN experts and NGOs contributed to the adoption of UN Resolution 478 in 2021. And this focused on the elimination of harmful practices linked to witchcraft accusation. And that work is ongoing as we try to implement that resolution. It's my real pleasure today to chair the GlobalSouth Network's PhD in Progress session, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about the speakers' research and their ideas, and also to hearing the discussions that follow. And I'm joined by a discussant and a peer commentator. Dr. Ngozi Marion Emmanuel is the discussant for today's session. She's a disability studies researcher and academic, and her research aims to show how forms of ableism manifest in various media, as well as in lived experience of disableism and the implications and impact on disability identity and disability rights. More broadly, Ngozi has researched into the seldom heard groups and how inclusion and diversity are linked for several protected characteristics. She is currently an Associate Fellow of the UK Higher Education Academy and supports research at the Sir Lenny Henry Centre for Media Diversity at Birmingham City University. Christiana Barau, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is the peer commentator for today's session. Christiana is PhD candidate at the Faculty of Law at the University of Ilorin in Nigeria. And finally, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's seminar, Dickson Tarnongo, who is a legal scholar, academic and social impact advocate. He holds bachelor's and master's degrees in law and is a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, as well as a registered foreign lawyer with the UK Solicitors Regulation Authority. He is pursuing a PhD in law at the University of Reading, which focuses on disability rights in federal systems, and he teaches contract law workshops. As the founder of Dickson Law Office Limited, UK, he combines research and advocacy to promote the rights of persons with disabilities, migrants, and other vulnerable groups. Today, Dickson will present part of his PhD project with the title Disability Rights in Federal Systems, a comparative study of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, 2006, and he'll be looking at implementation in Nigeria and India. So, Dickson, I'm going to invite you to speak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have 5 to 10 minutes of comments from our discussants, and then if time permits, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session with the audience. So, Dickson, we're delighted to have you with us today, and over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to share my PowerPoint now. Good afternoon, everybody. Like rightly introduced, my name is Dickson Tarnongo. And as a means of an introduction, my PhD is titled Disability Rights in Federal System, talking about Nigeria and India. The PhD project is to examine how federal structures affect the implementation of the CRPD, that is Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in Nigeria and India. These are two global South federations. Nigeria and India have ratified the CRPD and established disability rights laws, as legislations. These legislation include Nigerian 2028 Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Act, and the Indians called theirs Act, Rights of Persons with Disability Act. They are quasi-federal institutions. Structural, legal, and institutional impediment prevent disability rights from being regularly implemented. Nigeria, for instance, centralized administration, it lacks constitutional disability recognition. That is to say, our constitution does not take cognizance of persons with disabilities, talking about Nigeria. And then there are limited collaboration that could make it very difficult to implement. India has a decentralized structure. The federal and state governments share federal duties due to contradictory regulations and overlapping authorities. Weak institutional capacity, disability have not been fully implemented in India as well. My study solves two key research questions. One, how do Nigeria and India federal system influence the implementation of CRPD at national and subnational? Nigeria have federal, we are a federal state, so we have the federal government and the state. So the question is, how do Nigeria and India federal system influence the implementation of CRPD at national and subnational levels? Its second question is, which legal, institutional and governance factors hinder or enable disability rights? And number three, what comparative lessons can improve practice across federated systems? There are gaps in the literature. Few among them are there are few comparative studies of disability rights within federal system, especially in the Global South. Then second, the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities Scholarship often centers unitarily states or policy output, not governance structures. Now, there are also limited analysis of interactions among federalism, multi-level governance, and legal pluralism. My main argument in my thesis is federal structures shape how CRPD norms become practice. Second, implementation success hinges on intergovernmental coordination, institutional capacity, and legal coherence. A context-sensitive approach is essential to sustainable inclusion. These are my main argument. And I develop a theory, I'm developing a theory rather, which is contextual disability governance theory. And what this means is it integrates federalism theory, multi-level governance, and legal pluralism. Nigeria have a tripartite legal system, and most often time there are conflicts of law when it comes to the implementation of some legislation in some states. In this way, So, okay. Now, the methodology I'm using to do this work is comparative social legal. That is, one, design qualitative two cases study looking at Nigeria and India. Data, I'll be looking at the constitution, the statutes, CRPD reports, policy papers, elite interviews, disabled persons organization, policymakers, and experts on disability. I will also analyze thematic coding, comparative synthesis, triangulation for validity. Now, primary findings are one, no explicit constitutional recognition of disability rights. That is to say, our constitution, the Nigerian constitution, did not take cognizance of persons with disabilities. We rely on the Disability Act, which was enacted in 2018. There's also a centralized governance that limits state ownership. There's weak coordination and funding across the state. Institutional fragmentation, under-resourced disability commissions, and enforcement gap. Nigeria, for instance, has a National Disability Commission. However, it have limited funding, and the enforcement is not there, even though the law is very explicit. In India, there is strong constitutional backing. It's marked, there's a state level variation since they are not centralized like Nigeria. And you can see this in some of their states having strong disability legislations, and to a large extent, we can see it's more active compared to Nigeria. Now, the challenge there is these bureaucratic overlaps and persistent social inequality, and this affect the outcomes of the implementation. If we look at the table, comparative insight, you see that Nigeria have is a federalism, but it's more centralized. India is more decentralized, and the implication is that impact, ownership, and agility. Now, legal framework, Nigeria have Disability Persons with Disability Act, and Indians have theirs, 2016 Right of Persons with Disability Act, and the implication is this statutory scope-based operational operability. Now, constitutional base in Nigeria is absent, and India, there is in the constitution, and entrenchment of rights. That's the implication of that. Now, institution, weaker enforcement. That is talking about Nigeria. The institutions are weak and the enforcement is weak. Mixed capacity and resourcing mandate. Now, coordination is also a limited coordination in Nigeria. In India, it's moderate, and this intergovernmental mechanism. Now, policy and theory implications. Constitutional recognition of disability rights were absent. Strength, intergovernmental coordination, and accountability frameworks. Invest in national capacity, that is to clarify mandates and reduce overlaps among organizations. Institutionalize participation of disabled persons organization in policy cycles. And then adopt a contextual disability governance, which I'm developing. In conclusion, federal structures significantly, that is to a large extent, shape the implementation of Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It could make outcomes better. And the theory which I developed offers an analytical lens to understand and design better governance that we ensuring the rights of persons with disabilities. And then we talk about field interviews, which could help to refine or test government policies. Sorry. And lastly, I'll be expecting questions on my brief presentation. I was conscious, or I am rather conscious of the time, and I wanted to, because I want to hear questions on this so I could also get a feedback on my presentation. So I decided not to do a lot of discussion, use more time for presentation, but to have more time for discussion. But this is the time for questions and discussions.
Thank you, Dickson. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have our discussant.
Hello, everyone, again. And I want to begin by saying, brilliant research, Dickson. This is, your research is not just useful, but I believe it's very timely in an age where we are, continuously advocating for disability rights, especially within the context of the Global South. I have two suggestions. The first suggestion would be to evidencing of your findings and evidencing of your facts, especially when you're doing, contextual building or literature building or stating things as, matter of fact, because, throughout your presentations, you had told us some facts about how federal systems, impact on implementation of the CRPD and stuff like that. But I think one of the most important elements of a PhD, or what people look out for mostly, is how best you evidence, some of the things that you're saying. Additionally, I would suggest that if you could, submit any aspect of your PhD to a journal, that could be very useful. Not necessarily for it to be published, but to get feedback from reviewers. I found that when I did my PhD, that was really very useful, especially on the aspect of my methodology. What I had done was to submit my methodology, as it were, to a journal. And, I got very useful feedback, very useful feedback. It wasn't ultimately published in the long run, but then the feedback I got helped to build upon my PhD. Going out to the questions, just a couple of questions that I have. When you talked about policymakers as part of the population that you're going to interview, I wanted to ask, what level of policy making or policymakers are you looking out for? Are these government officials? And if they're government officials, are they involved directly in making disability laws? Because I feel that whatever policymakers that you're going to be interviewing should have a sense of disability laws, not just, an average policymaker. And I also wanted to find out whether your interview data will be disaggregated, and also whether analysis will be comparative as well. Are you going to, because you have different levels of population that you're going to be interviewing, you're interviewing DPOs, policymakers. So the data for, I think in a sense what I'm asking is the data for policymakers and also the data for DPO. Are you analyzing them as same data or different data? And are you analyzing this comparatively to, the interviews that you're going to be doing for the other country as well? And lastly, you talked about your intention to do policy testing. How do you want to evidence this in your actual research? Policy testing. Who are you testing it on? The final, recipients of the test going to be disabled people in both countries? Or I just wanted you to shed more light on, what you meant by policy testing. I think that will be all. Then I could, if there is time, I could come back to say some more things I've noted. But thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much. I'm in my second year for my PhD, and I'm here to, this is just the elementary part of my work, the beginning part of my work. Of course, when I develop further, when I keep the work going, I'm going to evidence all my findings. Of course, I have it, but to a large extent, but because it's a brief presentation, and I was more interested to hear the kind of advice that expert like you could impact my work. So, of course, I like the idea, and I must say thank you for the suggestion to submit my part of my work to journal so I could get quality feedback. I'll work on that. And then talking about policymakers, of course, there are different group of persons that could be labeled policymakers, talking about our legislators, even though not experts impact on disability rights, we do work with consultants who represent them when such policies have been made. So I'll be talking to the legislators. Okay. Also, I'll be talking to lawyers who are interested in this field as well. We have quite a few number of them, and I will also talk to them. And then disabled persons organizations who more often are the ones that propose those bills as private bills and take it to some of those legislators to be able to sponsor the National Assembly. Of course, I'm going to be doing this comparatively, Nigeria and India. My policy testing, of course, I'll be testing among the target beneficiary of the two legislations that I mentioned in Nigeria and India, to be able to know the impact of how these legislations, how far has it improved their life? Are they better off? And what are the challenges? Why is it not working? So I will test it out. And just to reverse it a little, talking about I think there was a question you asked where I should evidence disability in rights in federal systems. There's a book which I've been studying recently, which compile about more than 15 countries that had disability rights in federal systems. And from the little arrests, I haven't gone deep, but I could see that it's more effective compared to other countries that are not, like Nigeria in particular, that is not practicing through federalism. But where true federalism is practiced, I could see that these grassroots disability rights have extended to the grassroots and not only at the federal level. So that would be used, those more than 15 countries that I've studied so far will use to evidence my work. I think I've been able to remember those questions that you asked.
Yes, you have. I think regarding evidence, and I probably wouldn't have asked that question if I had seen a bit of literature in your abstract. I read it, or in your presentation as well. You know, because there were elements that were so matter of fact. You know, this exists, and it would have just been good to see, you know, a bit of support for that, even if it's just, you know, this is a small presentation, but, you know, it would be good to know that you're thinking in the right direction like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or contribution?
I wonder if Christiana, would you like to come in? Do you have any comments you'd like to make or any questions?
I say the presentation is a brilliant one and brilliant research too. A brilliant research. In fact, since it's it's related to my topic also, I think I have gained a lot listening to you and also reading your abstract. What I heard when you said Nigeria is a centralized government, we operate, yes, that is true. But the Disability Act, which is the national law, the states also are allowed to domesticate this act in their various states. And these states, most of these states actually have disability laws, but not in consonant with the CRPD. The Disability Act itself, the national law, is in consonant with the CRPD 2006. So that's why the state governments, the State House of Assembly are expected to domesticate the disability, the National Disability Act. But as it is, just few states in Nigeria have done that. And the few states that have done that, most of them have their own separate disability law, which is not adequate. Some of them do not address the various types of disability. Some of them address just the mental aspect of disability and just few of the types of disability. That's why the agitation for states to adopt or domesticate the Disability Act in their various states so that the implementation can be felt even by the grassroots. But because of this lack of domestication by the states, and that's why the implementation has been very difficult. And even the National Disability Act, the 2018 Disability Act, the implementation too. I think your topic has to do with implementation too, if
Yes.
I'm right. Yes. The implementation is nothing to write home, is far behind. Despite the 5 years window period, which the federal structures are expected to adjust their structures to be accessible to persons with disability. This is more than 5 years now since the law was enacted. Nothing has been done. Most of the buildings are inaccessible to persons with disability. So what I am saying is that the act is not only centralized at the national level, it's also open to the state levels to also domesticate so that all over everybody can, the persons living with disability all over Nigeria can have the impact, can feel the impact of the disability law and the implementation. And even there is provision for commission, the National Commission for Disability, which are responsible for the implementation of the Disability Act. The National Commission has been created, but still they are not functioning. They are not functioning because most of people living with disability have not felt the impact of the law. So I don't know if your work, since it includes implementation, we talk about the challenges of this implementation, of lack of implementation of this act of disability, is particularly in Nigeria, and particular about Nigeria, because I didn't have the time to actually go through your abstract very well. But I saw something on challenge implementation of disability laws. And also, the question I wanted to ask was addressed by Ngozi. When she asked her question, you answered that question too, and that question was addressed. But I have another one. That's where, I don't know, where the disconnections, if you address the disconnections between CRPD and the obligations and the national implementation of disability laws. If your work addresses that, I don't actually know. The disconnections between the obligations of the CRPD and the national disability laws of states.
Okay, so Dickson, over to you to respond. Thank you, Christiana.
Okay, I will start by the first comment that you made, and where you said the states are to domesticate the national disability legislation. In reality, what the states, I think about some few states in Nigeria have done is to water down the national disability legislation, and what they had is not up to the standard, it's highly substandard. And where I stated that Nigeria is a centralized state, you can see if you go to Abuja, for instance, you will see the disability right working in federal ministries and in public places. You could see elements of it working. At the state, it's practically zero. And again, that made me to suggest the contextual disability governance theory, which I'm developing. And what that theory seeks to achieve is to integrate federalism and multi-level governance, and also as well as legal pluralism. As a Nigerian, we are aware that we have a multiple legal system. We have customary, we have the English, and then we have, I think, Islamic law. And most times there are conflicts. So we have to, the theory seek to integrate all these levels of governance so that disability rights can be implemented. So on your last question, of course, the disconnect between the Nigerian disability legislation and the CRPD, which is actually the reason for the Nigerian version not to be implemented, is the fact that there are no monitoring mechanism put in place to ensure that this legislation is enforced. Whereas if you study CRPD, you realize that there should be a monitoring mechanism put in place to see that the legislation is monitored and is adequately implemented. Also, I think it was just recently we have the first case law on disability. Again, the legislation, even though they have not been tested in the court of law, in some other places, like even like UK here and some other parts of the world, the CRPD has been tested in the court of law and infringement people compensated. In Nigeria, it has not been tested in the court of law. These are the disconnect, and that is what the work is out to achieve by trying to see that all the gaps that are missing are properly addressed. The implication would be that in Nigeria too, we will have a disability legislation that works for the benefit of all persons with disabilities.
Okay. Ngozi, would you like to come in? I can see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Dickson, I think it would perhaps, because I wanted to ask the same question that Christina asked, I think it would be useful to acknowledge in your work that in Nigeria, for example, we have state-level disability laws and state-level disability acts, which are often sometimes separate from the federal ones. For example, I know the disability law in Lagos is as old as 2010, and whereas the Prohibition Against Disabled People's Act was just 2018, but then Lagos has had a disability law since 2010, and I think about 20 other states in Nigeria have, some form of disability legislations that govern the state. Albeit, implementation of these laws are, well, these are usually separate issues, but just to acknowledge it in your work so that people are aware of it, not exactly that you're testing these laws and their effectiveness, because from what you've presented, that doesn't seem to be the concern of your PhD. Your concern is Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, isn't it? The United Nations one. So not to, complicate matters for yourself, maybe to just acknowledge in Nigeria, we have some state level laws, sometimes, older than the adaptation of the CRPD, but, well, it's not a concern of your work. Because, what makes a PhD thick is, rightly defining the scope of your work. You don't have to do everything, otherwise you overburden yourself. You just, pick, this is what I want to do. I'm interested in the CRPD, not state level laws. But maybe in your literature, in your evidencing, in your background, you're able to speak to some of these things, not as your data or not as the focus of your study, but as part of the element of your literature or context to your work.
Thank you. I noted that down.
I think that's really, really great advice. I'd reinforce that as well. As someone who regularly examines PhDs, one of the biggest challenges is when people try and do too much and they therefore don't get the depth of analysis that's needed. So it's a really great topic. I think there's a lot of scope here. There's plenty for you to talk about, even with that narrower focus. I had a question, if you don't mind, and mine was about the involvement of persons with disability in your project. I don't know if there was some involvement early on in defining the scope of the project. I can see that you're intending to do some interviews with disability organisations, but I think the disability community are very aware of, nothing about us without us is the saying, isn't it? And so maybe could you just talk a little about how you plan to involve them, because they're really critical as at the other end of your PhD as well, when it comes to dissemination of your findings and trying to bring about change because of what you've found.
Yes. Of course, persons with disabilities will be involved, and they'll be involved in the aspect of testing the potency of this legislation that we have. If we take a good look at the Nigerian legislation on disability, it's been quite elaborate, and it would be good to ask the target beneficiary to have a discussion with them, an interview, to know what do they think. Is this legislation working? What are the challenges as far as they are concerned, or what needs to be done? Are there gaps in that legislation that need to be bridged? These are things that only persons with disabilities may be in a better position to address because they feel the impact of lack of the implementation. So I will definitely be working with them.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think
just for
sorry.
I'm also someone on a wheelchair, so I personally have my experiences, and of course I work with a lot of disabled persons organizations, both here in UK and in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, and some other places.
Thank you. So you appreciate when that question comes from. That's really good. Thank you. So could we open up to any other questions then that people have? That we have about 10 minutes for questions, or just comments if you'd like to. Please raise your hand if you have any further questions, comments. Naman, over to you.
I must say it's very important, and more important in the global South countries, where unfortunately overall culture, towards the disabled, first the understanding of disability and what, who falls in this, area of being disabled and different kinds of disability is very limited, unfortunately. And also at the policy level, the culture, the legal culture. One is the policy itself, written policies. Plenty of them are there. I think I can give the example of, you gave the example of India, which is not very much different from Pakistan and other South Asian countries. So in the policy provisions, housing planning, housing policy, building policies, hospital constructions and everything, there always be the requirement to do, to make all those arrangements. But when it comes to practice, there always be something missing. There's a famous case already pending before the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and I am aware of Chilean Supreme Court and the Colombian Constitutional Court in past similar cases with regard to either health or disabled, and all of these things, underline the importance of disability rights and laws. So I'm trying to say that it's very important and has a huge impact. Now, my question is that why Nigeria and India? Now, apparently, I can understand the comparative logic here is federal systems, but then they have different histories and different nature and scope of civil society, and also the way they respond to these issues, there are differences. So I was like kind of expecting that there might be some space scope for comparison with other regional countries within Africa, and why they are excluded, even though the legal framework and context are very much similar. So I was just wondering. I mean, there's no harm with comparing with India, and I think it's to some extent it might be useful in when you say the drawing lessons. So in terms of that, that is something could be useful. But again, the question arises that if it is, there has to be, in terms of research, there has to be a logic approach, the justification of comparison. Like what triggers that comparison? Is it like most different, least similar design, or most similar kind of design? I mean, I was just wondering if you can elaborate what made you go for these two countries and exclude other countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I made a comparison because of few reason. One, India has a quasi-federal system like Nigeria. Second, in India they have the union government. In Nigeria we have the federal government, which has more powers and financial control than the state. Similar to Nigeria and India share that similarities. Number three, unlike true federal federations like US, state in India and Nigeria do not have their own constitutions. So you can see that similarity too. And then if we look at Nigeria and India, during emergencies, the center can take over the function of state government. This is also applicable to Nigeria and India. And then the central parliamentary can legislate on state matters under certain conditions as well. This happens in Nigeria and also in India. So these are the reasons why I could see the similarities. And again, if you look at even the population, India is a very large, and Nigeria is growing also very fast, one of the biggest in Africa. So that also motivated me to compare the two countries.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions before we draw this to a close?
When you talked about the interviews and especially the methodology, so first I wonder how much is the sample size, and did you think about the sample, the respondent selection sample? What will be your approach to? I mean, I think Charlotte did touch upon this question, but I wanted to go into the detail. Like, what will be your approach to select the sample members, the respondents? Will it be like just randomly go into, or would it be like snowballing, approaching one person and then asking that person, they will point you to the other person? So I just wonder if you thought about the approach and the size. Like, in short, when are you going to decide that it's time to stop interviewing?
Yeah, basically, I'm going to be talking to disabled people's organizations, and then I'll also talk to activists, those people, disability practitioners, talking about people who are lawyers and are practicing in this area. So I'm going to do more of groups. I may not do individuals because of time and the resources, but I could talk to disabled persons organizations and key notable practitioners in this area.
Great. Okay, well, it just remains for me to say thank you very much, Dickson, for a really insightful and stimulating presentation. It's been very, very thought-provoking, and your work will clearly make a valuable contribution to the discussion of disability laws and their implementation in the two contexts that you're looking at. My heartfelt thanks also go out to our excellent discussant and peer commentator, Dr. Ngozi and Christiana, for your thoughtful and engaging comments and questions. And thank you everyone who's joined us today for taking part and supporting Dickson. The GlobalSouth network, it welcomes PhD students from all different disciplines and from all over the world to share their research and to receive feedback from interdisciplinary experts. And if any of you who are participating today are interested in presenting your work or taking part in a future session, then please contact Dr. Rayad, who's the founder and convener of the network, at the email address that's shared in the chat box. So thank you once again to all of you for joining us, and thank you once again, Dickson, and to our commentators. It's been a really wonderful seminar. I've learned a lot, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honor, for excellently chairing the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.